Welcome to this weekend edition of the Chiefs. With us, of course, Robbie Lampay of One News, and perhaps we will have the other Chiefs online later in the show. Now, we begin tonight with Finance Assistant Secretary Paula Alvarez to talk about subsidies amid rising oil prices. And then in the later half or the latter half of the show, we talk about the elections with COMELEC spokesman Director James Jimenez. So please stay tuned. The Chiefs will be right back.
Welcome back to Chiefs on One News. Ako po si Robbie Alampay and as you saw kanina, kasama ko po dito sa studio si Ed Lingao of One News.
Well, we were expecting to have with us from the Department of Finance, Yusek Paula Alvarez. Unfortunately, not because of any problem on her part, but it's actually a miscommunication on our part, so we can't have her tonight.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I hope Asik Alvarez is still listening. I actually don't know why hindi matutuloy yung pag-guest niya. But I think I do owe her an apology because kanina ginest namin siya sa big story. And I had been lined up to talk to her about the story na lumabas that the BIR is being directed to go ahead and collect
the
on
estate
liabilities of the Marcoses. And so I interviewed her, and it was very clear na we weren't speaking on the same level. And I think all in all, we tried to clear that up with the producers afterwards. And I do think there was miscommunication, and I'd like to apologize to Asek Alvarez on our behalf, on behalf of our team.
But just to be clear, that was not intentional.
It was not intended to be an ambush. If it felt like that, I do apologize again to Asek Alvarez. I'm not saying that that's the context for why hindi matutuloy. I really don't know. It could be, I don't know officially
Yeah, we don't
why.
want to assume.
I don't want to assume. I don't want to put any, but all the color is on our side here. If that seemed to be an out of line interview and not the context by which she was invited, then I completely agree. If she was not happy by the context of how the interview ultimately turned out. So, yun lang. I just want to say that on record. I hope Asek Alvarez can hear this.
Okay.
Okay.
Well,
Now, in the meantime, joining us is Director James Jimenez, the spokesperson of the Commission on Elections. Good evening and welcome back, Director Jimenez. Nakamute pa po
nakamute
yata
ka,
kayo.
sir.
Yeah. Good evening,
Hi, sir.
Robbie. Good evening, Ed.
good to hear you.
Thank you for having me.
Kamusta po ang preparations natin? I want to prompt that with, of course, itong sinasabi ng Senate na mukhang nagkaroon ng serious breach. Paki-clarify lang po as far as you understand it, what has been communicated and what should the public understand?
Well, as far as the statement made by Senator Amy Marcos, unfortunately, she's coming from an executive session of the committee. Kaya medyo under seal yung discussions dyan. I think it would be more proper if any revelations from that executive session should come from her, being that she's the committee chairman. On the part of the COMELEC, we're really waiting for the findings of the NBI before we speak any further on this matter.
Okay.
It's important to have all of the facts before we come out with a statement.
Okay, Director Jimenez, linawin lang po natin for people who do not necessarily follow all things about the COMELEC, but of course, peripherally, they'll hear about hacking, they'll hear about
Breaches.
Itong supposed breach that came out of the Senate hearing, particularly from Senator Amy Marcos, as far as I understand it, this is not referring to the supposed hacking that was also happened last year. Iba po ito.
Iwalay po yan.
Sige pa.
Iwalay po yan.
Could we take that? Sige. Could we take that at least maybe on the hacking side, meron bang ano yun? Is there any closure? Is there any findings on that?
Well, yes, there are in fact findings about the hacking incident, which happened not last year. I believe it would be around January 8th. So earlier in this year, no? Ito yung ni-report ng isang dyaryo na sinasabi na nagkaroon daw ng hacking sa COMELEC na agad naman nating pinabuluanan. Ngayon, we've been corroborated by several agencies saying that the COMELEC was not hacked, that no data was exfiltrated or removed in an unauthorized manner from the COMELEC.
Sir, okay, let me zero in now on, I understand what you're saying kanina na it was done in executive session. Sir, there are things that you may not be able to tell us. But at the very least, could you give us an idea of the nature of the data involved in the supposed breach? Is it the kind of data that could possibly, for example, change the results in the elections? Or is it simply a matter of privacy?
Okay. I think it is primarily a question I guess you could characterize the data in various ways. No, again, within the limitations of what I can actually discuss, I can't go into great
Yes, sir.
detail.
Yes, sir.
What I can say is that we believe that it will have no impact on the elections.
So it would not, from your, at least from your point of view, it is not the kind of breach that would change the numbers.
Yes.
Well, that was a short answer.
Okay, well,
No, I asked that, sir, because we're trying to divine what exactly they meant by a breach. Eh? I mean, there are many kinds of information, there are many kinds of data, and I also read that some of the data involved, for example, whether some commissioners drink wine or those kinds of details. So that's why I was wondering whether the data had to do with privacy issues or whether it had to do with the processes involved and the compromise in the processes involved.
Well, I think those profiles, for example, that bit about a commissioner liking wine, that sort of thing. That was actually part of what seemed to be a data dump on Facebook, right? An information dump on Facebook. So yeah, that's the kind of that at least that's one of the things that's being talked about. Obviously, the beverage preferences of a commissioner is hardly reason to doubt the integrity of the elections, I would say.
Although on the other hand, and I suppose this is also the direction that they were headed towards, it does raise some questions about the security involved in preserving, whether preserving current data or preserving future data in relation
Yeah,
to
but
the
that's the
elections.
thing, though. That's the thing. This is not COMELEC data, right? I think we established that early on, that COMELEC was not hacked, that this is not COMELEC data. If at all, this is data from a third-party individual,
Yes, sir.
from a separate organization, not the COMELEC. I mean, we can draw all of the connections that we want. Bottom line, the election system is secure. It is not held by anyone. It is not administered by anyone else. And only the COMELEC will have control over that data. And if the COMELEC was hacked, then it stands to reason that there's reason to believe that the system is secure.
okay. Before we continue on the updates on the integrity and security of the elections, let's just put everything on the table. There were a number of issues that were raised, in particular itong the matter of the printing of the official ballots. Election lawyer Romulo Macalental, among others, saying that there were breaches in protocol, in particular basically not having access, not being able to observe what was purported to be the start of the printing of ballots. Ano po ang kalalagayan dito?
Well, those were extraordinary times. We started printing ballots sometime in January. And if you remember, that was really the height of the Omicron surge. So, yes, we were taking extra precautions. Our commissioner in charge at the time, Marlon Casquejo, actually apologized to the committee, saying that if we had erred, then it was out of an overabundance of caution. We needed to make sure that our printing office remained operational. The problem kasi with COVID is that it hits one person, it hits another. Next thing you know, you're shutting the entire place down. And where we are in the timeline really doesn't allow us that sort of luxury anymore. So,
go ahead,
yeah,
sorry.
so tapos na yon, nangyari na yon. And we are committing to transparency. We are committed to transparency. And so we're opening up the observation now. Now, next Thursday, we're inviting stakeholders to come to the National Printing Office to back check the ballots that we've already printed. So basically, we will allow them to randomly select ballots from whatever we have there that's been printed. And remember, we haven't sent any ballots out yet, so they're all there for them to check to see if the ballots are on the up and up. Again, this is this might becoming a little late, considering that, of course, they wanted to observe from the very beginning, but with circumstances being what they are, we couldn't allow that, and now we're allowing them to check the ballots that have already been printed.
Yes, and
makita nila na maayos yung balota.
And we do see the announcement of the COMELEC setting up a live stream of ballot printing. So it's not
we
just,
did that too,
no,
yeah.
So it's not just people who can actually go. It's the public. I presume everybody can watch for as long as you said in this for as long as the ballots are being printed. That live stream will go on. No?
Yes.
But going back to that initiative, as you said, maybe over-eagerness, cautiousness, everybody understands and everybody remembers the context of COVID and the pandemic. But when you took that initiative, did you inform all the parties that you had made this decision?
Well, we informed the parties that we had started printing the ballots. So it's not like the ballot printing happened in secret.
Yeah.
It was simply that there were very stringent restrictions on who could come into the printing office. Yun lang naman yun eh. It's not that the people were there was a policy to prevent people from entering. It's just that there were very strict regulations on who could go into the printing office, when and where they could go.
Okay.
So, but they knew that the printing was happening.
Yeah, but to that point, just to be very precise about the timeline, as you said, well, they were informed as soon as the printing started, but they were not informed prior to the start that we're going to...
Of the week prior to the start of the printing. But as far as I know, it was about 2 weeks prior, because we actually started printing rather late. So the fact that printing was going to start on that date was, well, according to my memory, well known to people, especially to the stakeholders who were always informed of our activities. So, yeah, I mean, again, like I said, I'll have to go over the records again of what exactly transpired in the last 2 weeks prior to the start of printing. But my recollection is that, yeah, people knew that we were going to start printing any day.
Sir, you were saying that you only imposed stricter measures for political parties to be able to observe the printing, but they were not prevented from observing the printing per se. Was that clear to political parties when you started printing that yes, you can, you just have to abide by certain stricter rules?
We certainly told them at the gates of the NPO, right? Again, much more could have probably been done to clarify the situation, and in the end, the end result, of course, was that they were not able to observe. Again, there's just no getting around that.
Yes, sir.
Whether or not we could have done more, that's probably true.
Yes,
Sir, basic question lang. So we also have a sense of how urgent or how big this situation is. How many ballots are we talking about? If we started in January, it's now middle of March. How many ballots were actually printed?
We printed about well, as far as here's the thing about numbers, right? You print the ballots, and if you go by that simple basic number of having printed the ballots, we printed more than 71%, right? More than 71% of the requirement. However, a lot of those ballots printed have had to go under quarantine because we found defects in the printing, we found misprints, ballots were cut wrong, and so on. Ultimately, again, in terms of percentages, I would say about 30% of ballots that have been printed are good to go. The rest have been either quarantined, are subject to verification, or subject to reprinting. So in other words, hindi pa naman majority ng balota ang naiimprenta.
Well, sir, I asked about whether the parties were informed of the actual printing. Kasi if they were informed that they're just stricter measures and they still did not apply or asked to be able to observe, and then the onus would be on them. If that's the case.
There was a group of observers that fairly regularly came and asked to be allowed inside, except that they were not for one reason or another.
You're talking about the political party, sir, when you say observers, or these are third-party observers?
It was a group of observers observing on behalf of a group of political parties. It wasn't from one political party only.
Okay.
And what happened, sir? They were. I'm sorry, you were saying
they were not allowed to enter for lack of a permit from the printing committee.
Okay, but it would have been possible. Is that what you're saying? It would have been possible for them if they secured the proper permits. In other words, what I'm trying to establish is whether or not
You would have given
parties
them access.
whether the parties were not allowed to observe, or whether they just did not pursue the observation.
I think it would be fair to say that they did pursue the observation, that they really did want to go and see. It's just that they were not being allowed because there were concerns about safety and security and basically health concerns, health issues in allowing them to enter the premises.
Okay.
Remember, again, the NPO is full of people, and we were very strict about who would go in and go out of fear that a single case would lead to the shutdown of the entire program. So it's in that context that we were not allowing them to enter.
Okay, but it's still a long period. I mean, from January to the middle of March, when this came to light. Between that time, and particularly between the time that they were already informed, and that the printing had started, and that they were informed until now, was there no point prior to that when any of the parties said, teka muna, we need to stop this? Or was there ever a request that could we pause because we're really concerned that this has been running for 2, 3, 4 weeks already and we have not had any chance to observe?
There was no request to stop the printing, no.
And then this suggestion to, okay, kung hindi kami pwedeng magpunta, pwede ba at least magkaroon ng live streams? Can we have some cameras there? When was that first broached?
I really don't recall when that was mentioned, but certainly that was one of the earlier plans, no? When we were talking about how to solve the problem of observers not being allowed to enter. It was the live stream that was one of the earliest suggestions. That was sometime after the printing had started already.
Yeah, but if then between that time and then you're issuing this public statement as of March 17 that you've set up I don't know if that necessarily means na March 17 nag-start, but whenever it actually started, why couldn't it have started earlier?
Again, security considerations. Remember, setting up a live stream may seem like a simple matter, but it requires resources. It requires people to man the cameras. It requires cameras to begin with, and an internet connection. If you've ever been to the NPO, and people who have been there will know, it's not the best place to broadcast anything. In order to get this live stream started, we've had to devote some resources to this that normally would not be put in place for something like this. And again, there were concerns that the more people you had in the NPO, the more dangerous it would become for the people who were there.
Okay.
The only reason we're able to do it with any sort of speed now is because the restrictions have been lifted primarily. Now we're talking about restrictions in the number of people who are able to go there, in how many people are allowed in a certain enclosed space. Without these restrictions being lifted, I dare say it would still be difficult to set up a live stream now.
And we can imagine what you're saying, and we can certainly empathize with what you're saying. I think all workplaces, especially where you need to mass produce something, everybody understands. I've been to printing presses. I have an idea what you're talking about. But to be honest, I'm also getting the impression that, as you said, this was a problem that you recognized on your own initiative. You anticipated on your own initiative, kept you up at night at your own initiative. You found a solution and you took the initiative on your own. And now all of these solutions as well, setting up a live stream, we get the impression that the COMELEC, out of genuine concern, but it seems like the COMELEC has been trying to go at it alone. I would imagine there are people who are saying, well, we could help set up the live feed. We could have our parties support you in finding some technical solution here where everybody can be
Wi-Fi.
happy. Or is that accurate to say that the COMELEC has been going at this alone all this time?
Well, it is fair. The COMELEC has been going at this alone, and I would say that it would be appropriate, that it is appropriate that COMELEC go this alone, because the COMELEC has security concerns, again, over and above the health concerns that are very dominant in our minds. Remember, it's not simply about doing it ourselves just because we want to do it ourselves. It's more about making sure that the process integrity is preserved. When you allow people to enter a closed environment like the NPO, where you're printing secure documents, you want to be certain that they are not part of the flow of the work. You want to be certain that they are not able to insert themselves into the processes that are going on there. If you were to let someone go in and set up a camera system, for example, that would be a problem, because they would have to go into secure spaces that should not be open to the general public. So by default, this is the COMELEC's operation, and only the COMELEC can set up a system like this.
Sir, maybe you can give us an idea, in previous electoral exercises, how are parties allowed to observe the printing of the ballots? I'd assume that they're not there the whole time. I mean, I'd assume they're not gonna send a representative there to watch for the next 3 months. So I suppose random lamang yan, and how often would that be? At least in previous exercises.
See, that's the thing. They can come in. In previous exercises, we had an observation room that was available to them, and that's where they could really stay. Or in the words of observation, dyan sila bababad, no? Babad sila sa observation room. Occasionally, we would host walkthroughs for them where they could walk with us into the secure areas. Again, with COMELEC personnel, walking with them to make sure that everything is kept in order. Other than those two occasions, they would drop by from time to time, but always it's understood that it should be with COMELEC supervision.
Coordination.
Okay. All of that said, Director Jimenez, this is where we are. Process-wise, where are we on the printing of the ballots beyond parties lamenting their inability to have monitored it? Andito na tayo. Are there any petitions to go slow or to stop, to review? Is there any kind of process or protocol that they're invoking? Or does it just continue with, as you said, your acknowledgement that things could have gone better? In the meantime, eto na tayo, we'll do it better now.
Well, our new chairman is very adamant about the policy of transparency that he is putting in place, and so we will be continuing with the printing. Hopefully, we're even gonna pick up the pace some more, but with full transparency. Meaning to say, we will be instituting a system of observers where they can go in and keep watch on the process. Again, a more permanent live stream solution is being prepared. That'll take some time, but that's something that we're doing now. But whether or not we're going to stop or slow down, no, that's not being discussed at all. Again, as I said, we might even have to pick up the pace, considering that we are running out of time.
Okay, you said they can do back reviews of
Yeah.
parts that have already been printed. Just to build some scenarios here, in case they find something and they say, oh, mukhang ito, here's an example of a ballot na feeling namin delikado to. Or take that to another extreme that, let's say, certain parties nitpick over certain things. How might any of those scenarios affect our supply of ballots?
Well, they'll find a lot of reasons to complain about the ballots. In fact, we have several thousands in quarantine where ballots we've identified as being unacceptable to us. Ballots that have misprints, ballots that have smudges, ballots that have lines where there shouldn't be any lines. There are a lot of those, and they'll see that. They'll see all of that. But they'll also see that the ballots that we have cleared are all acceptable, precisely because we conduct 100% verification of the ballots. There's a lot of work left over, right?
So-
There's a lot of work left over.
So, linawin ko rin po yun. When you say that there are ballots that are damaged, quarantined, ang pinag-uusapan natin damage dito, as you said, mga smudges, misaligned, masyadong mahaba, and so on. Pero wala naman tayong makikitang, yung pangalan nito, nagpalit yung order, or yung pangalan nito, parang nag-iba, and so on.
Diretso natin, walang marka, walang
marka,
shading.
wala namang ganon.
Walang ganon. Especially none of the sort that people normally flag as means of cheating. Wala pong ganon. No? We'll see damage in terms of the physical cutting of the ballots and printing errors on the ballot. Printing errors of the order of, say, again, smudges, discoloration, and so on. Wala silang makikitang ibang klaseng problema because those don't exist.
Mm-hmm. Sir, I'm wondering lang, what kind of magnitude of sampling are you looking at if the parties want to be assured that everything is in order as far as the printed ballots are already concerned? I mean, you talked about random sampling kanina na parang if only to assure the parties that everything is in order. But I'd imagine you've printed so many million already. You printed... Go ahead, sir.
The guidelines for the event on Thursday, where they're able to back check the ballots, that's being prepared. But as far as I know, we're looking at the possibility of having all of the observers choose a certain number of ballots. I don't know yet how many ballots they'll choose, but every one of them will be able to choose a certain number of ballots randomly, and those ballots will have to be back checked.
Yeah. Okay. Sir, balik lang ako dun sa supposed data breach that the Senate committee said it found. How confident are you, or are you confident that there is nothing in that supposed data breach that could be used as a reason by any candidate on May 9 to question the results of the elections?
To the extent that we know that it's not COMELEC data, we're pretty confident. No? As for the rest, we're really going to have to wait on the NBI report. We don't see, without the NBI report, we can't talk about how broad the intrusion was or how deep it goes. So we really have to wait until the NBI report comes out. Otherwise, again, just speaking on general principles, this did not affect COMELEC data, then that should be safe.
Yes, sir. I understand you've been emphasizing that it is not COMELEC data because it is Smartmatic data. But on the other hand, it is Smartmatic. These are Smartmatic machines that are operating, that we're using for the elections.
Right.
So
that's true. But you get the machines from a vendor, doesn't mean that the vendor remains relevant to the operation of the machines, right? Except in a support capacity. So, for example, you bought, let's say you bought, well, in this case, we bought the machines from Smartmatic. Doesn't mean that Smartmatic has anything to do with the elections, right? From the very beginning, from 2010 to 2013, 16, and 19, Smartmatic's role in the elections has been steadily declining until in 2019 when they were barely even part of it.
yes,
The
sir.
thing is, just because you bought the machines from somewhere doesn't mean that everything that happens to where you bought it ultimately affects you downstream. Hindi rin naman, it's not like that. I know that's what the most simplistic reasoning will arrive at, but that's simply not the fact.
Yes, sir. But I know what you mean. In the end, it is Comelec that will operate the machines. But when you talk about Smartmatic data, I know you can't speak so much about it, but I'm trying to divine I'm trying to divine
Yes,
the
you are.
implications here. Claro ba? But yeah, are we talking about Smartmatic data as far as the data of the company is concerned, or as far as the operational, I don't know, code of the machines are concerned? I hope you get what I mean. The machines
do.
are
I do.
of course
I get what you mean.
technical, mechanical, but they're also run by code. So is that what they're referring to when they say data breach, or does it have something to do with Smartmatic officials and what they drink?
I get what you mean. Again, it's hard for me to zoom in on what exactly is involved in this data breach. Again, we're still waiting for the NBI report on this. But again, just going by what I know for a fact, all election-related data is with Comelec. All election-related equipment are with Comelec. And how that equipment is operated, especially on election day, that's Comelec territory. Smartmatic has nothing to do with that.
Okay. Director Ramirez, let's talk about other things, particularly let's talk about not the software or the hardware. Let's talk about the human resource that goes into elections, particularly the candidates.
Peopleware.
The peopleware, the content. And speaking of content, what's going to happen with the Comelec debates? What can we expect?
We've got a chief moderating the debate. So there's that. We believe that the debate will be different from others because it has a very sharp focus on the topics that are up for discussion. One of the things that you'll notice about all of the other debates thus far is that they've cast a really they've cast a really wide net, right, in terms of topics to talk about. They basically tell the debaters to be ready to discuss anything under the sun. It's not going to be like that with the Pilipinas debates. The Pilipinas debates will be focused on the given topics that we've asked the debaters to prepare for. In this case, the first presidential debate, we're asking them to discuss the pandemic and the economy. So the issues that will be raised, the questions that will be asked, will revolve around those topics. And I think that will give us a more focused debate.
Okay. And attendance?
Attendance. For presidential debate, we have 9 out of 10 confirmed attendance.
Okay.
Sir, will there be by any chance any room for other questions or talagang sarado yung tindahan? Whether it has to do, I know you just said the economy and the pandemic, but by any chance can anybody squeeze in on other issues that they may feel to be important as well in the elections?
Well, there's a whole universe of what's important in the elections. So we're going to focus on what's relevant to the issues under consideration, the pandemic and the economy. If we can find a bridge to those topics, then it's fair game. But otherwise, it's not part of the discussion.
Okay. Director James Jimenez of the Commission on Elections. Sir, maraming salamat po.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Ingat, sir. Happy weekend.
Happy weekend.
Thank you. Watch the debates.
We will.
Yes, sir.
That will be all for this edition of The Chiefs. We hope what was discussed here will keep the conversation going. Before we go, a reminder to our viewers, mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines. I'm Robbie Alampay.
I'm Edwin Gao, and we are One News.